The Wild West had its fair share of notorious outlaws. Billy the Kid, Jesse James, Butch Cassidy. But in 1899, a woman named Pearl Hart shocked Arizona Territory and the entire country by robbing a stagecoach. She didn't just become famous for the crime itself, but for the way she carried it out. Polite, calm, and with an unforgettable flair that turned her into a media sensation. This is the story of Pearl Hart, the Stagecoach Bandit. Pearl Hart was born in 1871 in Lindsay, Ontario, Canada. She was the fifth of 12 children in a strict Baptist household. From the start, Pearl didn't quite fit in the mold of a quiet, obedient Victorian girl. She was restless, curious, and drawn to adventure. At just 17, she married a gambler and drunk named Frederick Hart. Their marriage was a disaster almost from the beginning. Frederick was abusive, and he often left her alone for weeks at a time while he gambled away what little money they had. Still, Pearl followed him when he moved to the United States, drifting from Chicago to Colorado. And by the mid-1890s, Pearl found herself in Arizona Territory, separated from Frederick, but not exactly thriving. She worked odd jobs, sometimes as a cook, sometimes as a singer in saloons, but the real turning point for her is when she met Joe Boot. He was a small-time miner and drifter. Joe wasn't particularly dangerous, but he, like Pearl, was desperate for money, and he was tired of struggling. I hear you, Joe. I hear you. By 1899, Pearl was broke. Some say she had been working as a cook in Mammoth, Arizona, when the local mine shut down, leaving her without an income. Others claim she had taken to gambling and racked up debts she couldn't pay. Either way, Pearl and Joe Boot found themselves with few options. That's when Pearl supposedly said, "I am resolved to make a desperate effort to get money enough to reach my mother." Whether that was truly her motive or just something she told reporters later, the decision was made. Pearl and Joe were going to rob a stagecoach. On May 30th, 1899, the Florence and Globe stagecoach was making its usual run through Arizona Territory. It carried 6 passengers and a driver, all unarmed and unsuspecting. As the stagecoach rounded a bend, Joe Boot stepped into the road with a revolver, forcing the driver to stop. From behind the bushes stepped Pearl Hart, wearing men's clothes, baggy trousers, a broad-brimmed hat, and carrying her own revolver. The sight of a woman in outlaw's disguise shocked everyone. Pearl and Joe ordered the passengers to hand over their valuables. But here's where the story takes a twist. Pearl was oddly polite. She reportedly comforted the nervous passengers, telling them not to be afraid. After collecting about $431 in cash and valuables, Pearl handed back a little bit of money to each passenger so they could afford meals and lodging on their journey. One passenger later said she had the air of a schoolmarm, rather than a desperado. With the loot secured, Pearl and Joe left the stagecoach continue on its way. It was by all accounts one of the most courteous robberies in the Wild West Territory. And of course, that plan quickly unraveled. The robbery happened only 30 miles from Florence, and word spread fast. Lawmen organized a posse, and within days, Pearl and Joe were tracked down. They had gotten lost in the desert, they were exhausted and hungry, and offered little resistance when captured. When the authorities realized one of the bandits was a woman, the story exploded. Newspapers across the country plastered her picture, often exaggerating her looks and calling her the Bandit Queen or the Lady Bandit. For the first time, Pearl Hart was famous. Pearl was brought to trial in Florence, and the courthouse was packed. Reporters described her as charming, witty, and unrepentant. She gave interviews freely, painting herself as a desperate but brave woman who had taken matters into her own hands. At her first trial, the jury actually acquitted her. Some said it was because they couldn't believe a woman could be guilty of such a crime. Others believed the jurors were simply charmed by her. But the judge wasn't having it. He was furious. He had her arrested again on a different charge, interfering with the U.S. mail since the stagecoach had been carrying letters. This time, Pearl was convicted and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Pearl was sent to Yuma Territorial Prison, one of the harshest prisons in the Southwest. Conditions were brutal, especially in the Arizona heat. But Pearl became something of a celebrity even behind bars. Visitors came to catch a glimpse of the infamous Lady Bandit. After serving only 2 years, Pearl was released in 1902, reportedly after writing a letter to the governor begging for a pardon, so she could care for her sick mother. After her release, Pearl faded into obscurity. Some reports claim that she moved to Kansas City, married again, and lived a quiet life under a new name. Others said that she returned to Arizona and ran a cigar store. Still others claim she joined Buffalo Bill's Wild West show for a time, playing up on her outlaw past. What's certain is that Pearl Hart never robbed again. Her brief, bizarre career as a stagecoach bandit was over, but her legend lived on. Pearl Hart's story raises a lot of questions. Was she really a desperate woman just trying to survive, or was she a thrill seeker who loved the fame? Either way, she remains one of the most unique outlaws of the Wild West, remembered not for bloodshed, but for the strangest, politest stagecoach robbery in history. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, follow, and share. And I want to know what you think. Was Pearl Hart a sympathetic figure, just doing what she had to do? Or was she simply a criminal who got lucky with the press? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts.